I want to know a little bit about what little Jake was like. What were you like growing up?
Oh man, that's a
Starting with
good
the heavy,
question.
starting with the heavy hitter questions, I guess.
All right. So, oldest of three kids, so I was like, I was kind of like the serious, responsible one.
Hmm.
Um, Always into music, um, music and art and science, really like my jams.
Nice.
Um, I was playing on those like old school Casios, from the '80s when I was
Sure.
like a little kid.
Yeah.
Um, I remember my first song I ever made was I think I called it Mickey and Pluto floating on a carpet through space. I was probably like 4 years old. Made a
Wow.
hot synth jam,
Nice,
and I
man.
was like,
4 years
wow, this
old.
feels really good. This is
Awesome.
cool.
Cool. And
Um,
you titled it. It wasn't just called Untitled
yeah.
4 or something.
No, and I
Dope.
don't know why I remember that. Like, I honestly, I don't have a great memory, but that one stuck.
That stuck. Sure, sure.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I was always a pretty serious kid. Always into collecting stuff though.
Hmm.
Um, so I've had all kinds of collections,
Yeah, do
like
tell.
coins, like,
I collected
stuff like
coins
that.
too.
So,
Nice, man.
nice.
Yeah, I
So
have the
especially
whole
when it comes to
collection right
like,
up there. Actually, I mean, I don't do
oh,
anything with them, but they're literally in like a yeah, nice little area in my closet there.
we,
Yeah.
mine are probably in a box somewhere.
Hmm.
Cards, but of course, like, you combine that with a love of like music and synthesizers and gadgets and stuff, and
Sure.
then you end up buying everything Teenage Engineering ever made, and
Sure.
all the fun,
What's
all
the
the fun
first
little
piece of
gadgets.
gear from TE that you purchased?
Uh, I think the OPZ was the first thing I bought, and it
Oh,
came with a pocket operator. It was like a package bundle from
oh,
B&H Music,
cool,
who I
cool.
or B&H Photo and uh, something, whatever.
Whatever it's
Um,
called. Yeah.
they're awesome. I love them. This isn't a plug, but it's just like my
Yeah.
favorite store. They're down the street.
Sweet. Yep. Yep.
They send their stuff around on like conveyor belts, and it's like very like cool and
Yeah.
futuristic. But it
Wait,
came in
tell
the
me more about
bundle.
that. They send you stuff like what's the conveyor belt in the
Yeah,
store?
so like, well, you kind of like place an order either online or
Mm-hmm.
with the sales associate on the floor,
Yeah.
and then you go to a counter to pick it up, and it's like coming. They send it from like the downstairs warehouse, and it's coming
Okay.
through like conveyor belts, and
Oh,
then they
that's
have
pretty
it in like
cool.
already like in a little package for you.
You know,
That's
that's
cool.
not so. I guess I've ordered things from there before, and I guess this is before the times where, like, recently on Amazon, for the first time I think ever, and a couple days ago, I got an item ordered in the morning, and it came here before the day ended. I'm like, okay, this is indeed the future. But
Yeah,
before I think even maybe before we had 2 day shipping, or before it was as normal for Amazon 2 day shipping, I remember ordering something from B&H a while ago, several years ago, and it got here the next day, and I didn't like select, next day
nice.
shipping or whatever, but I was just kind of blown away by just that fact. I was like, how did I place the order now, and how is it here within 24 hours? It doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense to me. But that's
and great
that's cool that they have
great
that
customer
system.
service too, because
Cool.
I exchanged like two or three OP1 field units
Oh wow,
because of
had
my
some
like
issues.
OCD, and
Okay, yeah, yeah,
like
sure,
little tiny like screen issues, or like a
sure,
key was like a little crooked.
yeah,
Um, and finally the third time they're like, all right, man, like, if this one doesn't do it for you, I think you just need to return it.
sure, yep,
But it
yep,
did. I love it, and I love it.
awesome.
Um,
That's cool, man. All right, so oldest of three, into music for as long as you can remember. You're a
yeah.
father as well
Yep. I
now.
got two
So
kids.
how is fatherhood? How do you like? It's the most beautiful thing in the world from my
Yeah.
experience so far. I follow your wife now as well, who's doing some really incredible stuff.
Oh,
We'll
great.
talk about that a little bit as well. But how's fatherhood treating you? Like balancing that coupled with what you do musically and creatively.
I mean, well, fatherhood is great. I
Mhm.
love it. It's challenging.
Mhm.
It's I feel like there's this myth out there that like once you're a parent, you like stop, once you have kids, you stop doing fun things, like you don't go out anymore, and
Mm.
but like honestly, I do like way more fun stuff with my kids every
Mm.
weekend. Like, every
Okay.
free minute, every weekend,
Yeah.
we're out doing, like sure, some of it's kid stuff, but like most of it's fun for anyone.
Sure. Sure. And seeing them
Go to
have
the
fun.
zoo, or I'll drag my daughter to the to like Guitar Center or something.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun.
That's
Super
cool.
challenging too, though. We had some health challenges with my daughter
Mhm.
along the way. and adding the second was a trip for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work. It just really changes the workload. Kind of like
Yeah.
instead of your off time, instead of like, okay, I need to take 20 and maybe like lie down, take a nap or something. Instead of that, it's like I need to take 20 with the other kid now. We're like,
Yeah.
it's just
Like a bit of a
changing hands.
marathon.
Yeah, but
Different
um,
dynamic,
but it's great. Yeah.
right?
And watching them like grow up together is like the cutest thing. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's great. But I also have a full-time job. I'm an architect in my real life.
Oh,
So
in real life, this is fake.
yeah,
Yeah, the music stuff is all just yeah. Okay.
yeah. So I have like a really demanding full-time job too.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and honestly, this kind of stuff at night, like the synths come out at night after
Oh,
everyone's in. I
that could
get
be
home.
the name of a show or something. The synths
Yeah,
come out at night.
yeah, that's
That
right.
could be something, right? A song title or
Yeah, I
something.
like that.
I don't know if it is or not. It kind of sounds nice.
Yeah, I've never said that out loud, but yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
got a nice ring.
Sure.
Um, so I finish up the workday, I get home, put the kids to bed, um, and then I don't get to start doing this kind of stuff till like 9 o'clock, and then but
Yeah.
kids get up at 5, 6, so it's really squeezed. It's really squeezed in there. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really have to make the most of it, and that's actually what got me into this kind of stuff in the first place. I was I've always been in bands growing up, like rock bands, playing
Nice.
bass mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have so much fun on stage. I would just go. I'm pretty reserved uh, in my regular everyday
Mm.
life. Always, especially in my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
But I go wild on stage.
Mm.
Uh,
That's cool.
I'm kind of a maniac. I just really let it rip.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's awesome.
but
Okay.
as I got older and like, my job became more demanding, and it just finding time to practice with other people just wasn't working.
Sure.
The last band I
Sure.
was in was like a Disney cover band called the Little Mermen. They're still going strong, but it was fun. But
Little Merman. Gotta love
yeah,
it.
not like really my kind of music, but it's still fun.
Sure.
Um, but so like I kind of had to start making stuff on my own, and that's what got me into kind of producing,
Mm-hmm.
writing, arranging my own stuff in the first place, which I had never tried before really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but I soon, realized, this is going back a few years that, I can kind of do it all on my own.
Sure.
It might not be as fun, um,
Sure. You can
but
figure
it
it out.
works, and that's
And
why I ended up building this kind of like one man band kind of rig.
have you performed with independently by yourself, either live stream or in person, or is that something that you would like to do
Not yet.
eventually?
It's a big goal.
Okay.
Big goal of mine. I have like a live set that is like 90% there.
Hmm.
Actually, my I don't know if you've experienced this before, but my OPZ crashed on me
Oh
a couple of
shoot.
days ago.
Maybe once or twice I have had
Yeah,
it like turn off, like not in recent memory, but I think I have had that happen before. Yes.
yeah. And when I turned it back on, I lost like a bunch of the songs I was working on. I backed it up maybe
Oh.
like a month or two ago.
Oh wow. That I
So
haven't
I got
experienced.
minor setback, but I'm really
Mm.
hoping in the next like month or two to just get out there and start playing shows.
Like I'm in the same boat as you. First of all, like I don't know what the holdup is, but I have the equipment, I have the time, I have this OB4 speaker to just go out on a boardwalk and just be like, oh, this
Yeah.
is my show right here. I'm sitting right here and I'm just gonna play some music. Like if you enjoy it, cool. I enjoy it most importantly, and just kind of do that. Haven't done it yet. Maybe this is a good reminder for me because to your point, like creating stuff is fun, of course. Creating music is fun, of course, but the glimpses that I've had into what a live performance, and you may know that I play the piano as well, so having
Mhm.
some opportunities to like play the piano at like a actually this was probably one of the highlights at a yoga class. It was like an event that we did where I was playing the piano and playing some music from my teenage engineering equipment. They actually had an acoustic piano in there, which was really cool, and just playing those together was one of the highlights where like I'm like, oh, this was just a ton of fun, and I want to do more of that. I want to do more of the in-person stuff. So this is a good reminder, for me to actually make that happen, and maybe for you as well. But it sounds like you're already working
Right
towards it.
on.
You're just finishing up the half
Yeah,
your set
well,
list.
hey, let's get on a build together. There's so many
See,
clubs out here in the area. I
there
don't know
you
how
go.
you're like relatively close to the
Yeah,
New York
yeah.
area, right?
I'm going to New York next week.
Let's
I
let's do
should
it.
probably hit you up. I'm going to New York next week on
Nice.
what? On Thursday. I don't know what your schedule. Maybe I'll hit you up offline. But yeah, Thursday
Cool.
for actually a connection I made Actually, through well, you're tangentially related to this. So of course, you and your wife are friends with Miss Rachel. You mentioned. I think I don't know if
Yep.
I should
Yep.
say, but that's cool. I
Yeah.
mean,
No. No.
it's
No.
fine,
No.
right?
No. It's
Okay.
cool. Yeah. No.
So
We love her.
yeah. So one of the women named Natalie, who was on her program on a few episodes, I actually had her on an episode of the show, which was really incredible. And yeah, she's in a play, a musical called Rock and Roll
Oh,
Man in the
cool.
city. And so I got press tickets to go, and I'm gonna go support, and I'm like really excited about it. It's like, oh, I'm press. Oh wow, check me out. Okay,
Nice.
cool. So I'll be out there next week. But yeah, definitely. I mean,
Cool. That
I'm
sounds
close
great.
enough to the
Yeah.
city for
Hit me up.
sure. So we can definitely find a way to make that happen. So
Cool. Well,
going
yeah.
back to
Let's
the
let's let's support each other in that goal.
1000%,
Sometimes a little push. Sometimes you need a little push.
1000%, man. Yeah. I mean, imagine that. What if we even, yeah, whether it's, I mean, we can figure it out. There's parks in the city. There's like we can just go somewhere and just do it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
That way we're holding each other accountable. We're like, we don't want to let the other person down. I'd be down for that, thousand
Yeah.
percent.
Cool.
I don't. Yeah. All right. So we'll talk offline about that. So about the Z, your first device was the Z. Mine was too. It's also my favorite. I'm gonna hesitate. Yeah, I'll say that. My favorite piece of TE equipment for sure. And I just it talks to me. That sounds very philosophical. The workflow with this piece of equipment compared to the OP1 Field, it just resonates with me a lot more. I
Yep.
have not yet been able to crack the code of the OP1 Field in terms of what I want to be able to do with it. Is I want to be able to have it standalone, not connected to anything else, and just create something like from scratch right on there. I have not been able to do that yet. I bring music into it, I sample, I listen to music that I like listening to elsewhere on the OP1 because I could loop parts of it and things like that, which is like a
Hmm.
lot of fun for me. I don't know if that's what they designed it to be able to do, but I use it for that purpose kind of mainly at this point. But with the Z, you give me that, you give me some headphones or my OP4 speaker. I don't need anything else. I'll just rock with stock sounds on there, and like I have a really fine understanding of like the step components, and just it just constantly blows me away. So like for you, what would you say is your most used slash favorite, if that's the same answer, piece of TE equipment?
I mean, the OPZ is my favorite piece of equipment, possibly favorite invention.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Like
So we're in the
period.
same
It's
same
just so
page.
good.
Yeah.
It's too good.
Yeah.
It came when I started, um, learning about MIDI and hooking up different like synths and drum machines. I was using an old Alesis MMT8, which
Okay.
I don't know if you know. It's like a really primitive sequencer that's really just like a MIDI recorder. You play into it, you mute and unmute tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very intuitive, and it just so happened that like the way I was making music is it's 8 tracks. Um, I would have like a kick track, a snare track, hi hats, percussion,
Uh-huh.
bass,
Yeah.
arp, lead, chords. So it was like exactly how the OPZ is
Oh,
set up,
how
and then
cool.
and
Okay.
then I kind of like hit a wall with the MMT8 because it's not super flexible. It's like really, it's really old.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned about the OPZ and I picked it up. And of course, there's a bit of a learning curve. There's no screen.
No
There's,
screen. Yeah.
it looks like something out of like The Fifth Element. It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
if you see it, it's not really intuitive, like what you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, if you're seeing it for the first time, it's like,
Sure.
okay, cool. Like, what do I do with this?
Right, right.
I spent a little time with it, and it's just second nature. I mean, it's like zero to jam in 20
Mm-hmm.
seconds.
That's
Bam.
right. So quick.
Uh,
Yes.
but I'll say I haven't had as much luck with the stock sounds as you have. I mean, I know you've made some awesome sounding stuff with the internal synth engines
Mm-hmm.
and samples. I'm able to use that to like generate a a jam or to like arrange when I
Mm-hmm.
pull it away from the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've just had better luck, kind of like tweaking like old school analog synths
Hmm.
that I'm using this to sequence.
I see. So when you do that and you like something that you have going on, you then would record it to somewhere else? And if so, where do you like record it to capture that idea?
So basically, what I'll do is I have like if you want to dive right into
Please.
workflow,
Please, yes. I'm
um,
curious.
but that's a dangerous rabbit hole. So stop me if I'm like veering off the deep end
For
here.
sure.
So, sequencing, arranging
Mhm.
on the OPZ, or I'll kind of like jam out a loop on it. I have a bunch of the synths and drum machines that I use
Mhm.
are all you know uh, have like individual track out like audio outs to a mixer. Right
Mhm.
now, the TX6, which is amazing. I've kind of switched from um, a more like analog style, like big old
Mhm.
mixer,
Mhm.
which it is still the same result because I'll record it either onto USB, not yet multi-track in the case of the TX6, but I'm hoping that day will come.
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I was recording onto SD card on the other mixer here straight through USB to Logic on 12 individual tracks, and
Mhm.
so I'll kind of get like a jam, basically jam it out, mute, unmute, kind of perform it live, do like
Mhm.
my filter sweeps and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Um,
Hmm.
and then spend some time like listening back and arranging in Logic.
Mhm.
But I'll still have it all on like 12 separate, everything separate, kick, snare, so it can all be mixed independently.
How do you get
Um,
the separate tracks? You mentioned that the TX6 does not have multi-track outs for recording. So do you record them
well,
individually?
it has multi-track out into via USB into a
Not
phone or
to
computer,
not to
just
USB
not onto
stick.
USB drive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, not
Gotcha. Okay.
onto flash drive yet, but I have to imagine it'll come.
Mhm. I would think so,
Um,
right? If they can do it on
yeah,
one way out, they should be able to. Yeah. Do you use Logic on? I'm assuming your computer, not an iPad, not with the latest Logic.
right,
You have
right.
a
I haven't really
desktop.
gotten into like I know I've seen you use the iPad a lot for like all kinds of
Yeah.
everything from like the koala sampler and like
Yeah.
mixing. I think
Core Gadget is
maybe
one I
some
use a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of right now. Yeah, Core
Yeah, I know
Gadget
there's
too.
so many tools on there.
Yeah.
I just haven't done it yet. It's like a little daunting to me, and so is Logic too. That's the reason I like to keep everything. I keep everything hardware based,
Mm.
um, because to me I'll never learn. I didn't study producing or engineering or I studied architecture and like
Mm.
this is what I get to do in my free time. But
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I know I'll never be as good as like a real engineer or producer when it comes to Logic and just infinite plugins
Mm.
and mixing and mastering. Um, so I kind of take comfort in like the limitations of the hardware synths and just the raw sounds that come out of it into the
Mm.
mixer.
Mhm.
And then a good buddy of mine actually goes by the name OK Baby.
Nice.
He makes like
Cool
really
name.
cool vaporwave
Nice.
music, and
Okay.
he I'll send him like the 12 or so raw tracks. Sometimes do some overdubs or something,
Mhm.
and he'll mix and master them and
I
like make them
see.
sound like kind of bring them to life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which is a what do you call it? A an absolute skill, right? It's like
yeah,
just like
yeah,
making something from scratch, like you and I are doing, to experiment. Like that's a skill that maybe the people who are mixing and mastering, most of them may not have that ability. But handing this over and being like, hey, turn this from a 7 or 8 or whatever to like those few extra levels up to just make it sonically sound the right
yep,
way everywhere. That's stuff that I'm not as I haven't historically been as interested in, mainly because the time that it takes from getting a musical idea from that 7 or 8 level that I think sounds great, like really, really good just as is, to like spend a lot more time just fine tuning and like doing these things that to me are like a lot smaller, right? It's like it's really, really good. It's like almost there, and then it's like more time just to kind of make it a little bit higher.
yeah,
I'm ready to just kind of rock with the next idea,
yep,
but I'm starting to like just like little by little understand and appreciate certain things, such as like maybe one of the fundamental things, right? Like my OPZ sounds, for example, like how this sounds to me when I'm using, say, these headphones versus the OB4 speaker versus the car, right? I've been using it in the car lately, which is
yep,
like mad fun. Thankfully, my Chevy Equinox still has a port, a regular 3.5 port on there.
awesome.
But that thing, because my wife is upstairs, she hates loud music just as much as I hate low sounding
Yeah,
music. So we have that little battle sometimes, right? And so like
yeah,
being able to
everything's
go in
in
the
here for
car,
me too.
is that
I
right?
hear you.
Yeah. And but I'm sure so it's in here because it's late night, you have family, all that stuff. The times that you have a chance to I don't know, connected, like maybe if your family's out or whatever, and you have speakers that you actually can crank up, it's different, and it's just so like it's you feel it, you experience it, you're immersed in it, right?
Yeah, putting the sound out in the world is definitely like, or into the room is definitely a very different experience from having it direct into your ears, where it's
For
not really
sure.
interacting with like,
Other
the
stuff.
environment
Yeah.
in any way. Um, I have a studio kind of set up, and like, the room on the other side of this wall is now my son's room. We had
Hmm.
like, an extra room for a few months, and I have that. I don't know if you've seen on like Instagram or whatever, but that larger synth rig that I had up on the windowsill. I have like studio monitors there,
Okay.
and so basically I have like I have a big version of this and a small version, and the idea is that this one is going to come, and kind of replace it,
Mm.
because I'm not able to. I just don't have the space
Gotcha.
anymore.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there were times when I could kind of jam that out,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned with the car, it is important. That's like one of the most important places to listen to a mix back.
Hmm.
Um,
I've heard that because of the obvious reason, right? A lot of people are listening to music in their cars.
yeah, and it's got a very different sound. It's a lot boomier. A lot of times, got that, like, a lot of cars have like a massive sub in the
Yeah.
back,
And
and
enclosed.
a little more immersive because it's got like all, depending
Yeah,
on how, like, how good your stereo system is.
for sure.
Um, when I was in a rock band in the Midwest, we would like uh, we would go and kind of like record all day, and the engineer would burn. We kind of take a pause, and the engineer would burn what we're working on onto a CD, and we
Hmm.
run outside into the car and just like turn it up full volume, and then come back in with our notes.
Yeah, how it's sounding, what's going on, and what we
Yeah.
may need to tweak. Well, let me ask you a question about like your experience with the OP1 field. So you use it. How do you use the OP1 field? Do you use it as a synthesizer, like a generator, or do you use stuff on tape as well? Do you use the sequencers? Like, what's your sort of workflow with that piece of equipment now?
So that's a good question because I've kind of struggled with it a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
I got the original OP1. I know, actually, I was like, one of the first times I think I was talking to you online.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just like responded to it like a story or something and kind of asked a question, and you sent me this really thoughtful like audio message back.
Mm.
Um,
I don't remember.
Kind
What
of
did I
like,
say?
tell me your thoughts about it and
Oh,
just
okay.
how it's like, um, it's like really cool instrument if you're into just having like, really unique pieces of gear and things like that. You might
Gotcha.
find a use for it. It's definitely,
Got you.
worth
This
having,
is
etc. But
before
that's
you
when I was
bought
like, oh,
one.
this guy's like really cares about like
Ah,
talking
dope.
to people and like
Yeah,
educating people, and it's like that's cool.
I do. Yeah. So this is
So yeah,
before you
respect.
bought one. You had
Yeah,
questions and you asked me because I posted something about. Okay, I talked to X number of people or whatever on the platform. I obviously remember you, but I don't remember exactly what that message
yeah,
was back. But
sure.
I'm glad
I
it
wouldn't expect it.
resonated. Yeah.
So I got a really good price on the original,
Hmm.
for like a brand new one. So I jumped on it just to see what would come of it, and I had fun for a little while. But I kind of hit a wall where I'm just really used to having everything so locked in on the Z, and I just wasn't able to find that kind of work. I struggled with the workflow a little bit. Like the
Hmm.
tape is cool. I think it's like amazing for like if you're doing ambient stuff or like soundtrack style kind of stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
For the really like punchy. I'm into like really like almost
Beats.
like industrial
Hmm.
minimal like
Hmm.
goth synth like low. It's like that. It's just not really very conducive to that
For
style, I don't
sure.
think.
For sure.
But there were limitations. Like what I found the most limiting about it was just the single tape track, because I just like to spit out ideas,
Ideas.
and like how do you do
Same.
that just on one tape track? And people do it. There are people who are like amazing, do anything. Can put
Mm.
an entire album on like one tape
Hmm.
track probably.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but when the Field came out, I don't know how I talked myself into. Oh, B&H ran like a promo with like it's like $500 off or something.
Get out.
And
That
I
sounds
talked,
way
yeah,
too much.
500 off.
What?
And I talked myself into getting it, and I kind of everything that I found kind of like too limiting about the original ended up being almost useless to my like style of music and
Sure.
workflow.
Yeah.
And but the field kind of like fixed a lot of that with like the multiple tape tracks, with the subtractive like analog style um, synth engine, the Dimension
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
engine,
yeah. That's a
which
good one.
that's the sound that I'm used to. It's still not. It doesn't sound like a raw, like a real, like raw old school synth or anything,
Right.
um, but it's much closer to that sound. And the more just like pure audio, it wasn't coloring things in the same
Yeah.
way. So like sample, I was able to use like drum samples and things. It just made it feel much more like a usable workstation.
Sure. Sure.
So that was very exciting for a while, and I made a bunch of cool little jams. I used it kind of the way I use it now is really to add some color to tracks. I do everything. Everything I do is like a single take, even when I put it out,
Hmm.
which I've only put out a few tracks so far under this new project,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really all like a single take
Hmm.
jam.
So improvising
Um,
over one of your OPZ and synth beats that you have going, you might take the OP1
yeah, so I
field.
might just like add like a little bit of like you know, glitchy effect or like a string sound or just like a little bit of color
Okay.
to it, and I think it's perfect for that. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like you, I haven't been able to kind of pull like a full track out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's hard. It's so much
yeah,
harder than the Z for us, maybe because our workflow is a lot more conducive. I love what you said. You said something like 0 to 20 or something, like how fast it is with the Z to
yeah,
get an idea going. Like you can hand me that thing, same with you, I'm sure, and you can get something sounding either decent or great, depending on, how it kind of works out. For me, there's many things about the Z that stand out that make it just a special piece of equipment. One of them that I love talking about is the master track, and
yep,
specifically sequencing key changes. I love that so much.
yep,
And then you can do
amazing.
that with drums as well, of course, if you want to add those in. Like things like that are just like it's kind of like a cheat code because I think there's probably still a lot of people who maybe didn't give the Z a chance because it's not as glamorous as the OP1, or certainly not as the OP1 field. It's not as popular either, um, but it might be better for you or for this person. It certainly is for us for the way that our workflow, kind of is.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so surprised that it's not way more popular than it is.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the master track is awesome. What I find most useful about it actually is I'll kind of like do a jam, um, I'll write a bass line, some, like pretty fleshed out, maybe a loop.
Yeah.
Um, but you probably don't have this problem because you're like a real keyboard piano player,
Hmm.
and you like really understand, music theory and scales and chords,
Hmm.
obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but and I have a lot of that background. I studied piano. I took piano classes for probably a decade back. When I was younger.
Oh yeah.
So I
Okay.
have a lot of that background, but it's not fluent to me.
Hmm.
So I know that
Sure.
like when I'm working on it sounds good, but if I'm going to do a solo, like if I just want to like rip like a synth solo like over my loop or something,
Hmm.
I found it really helpful to look at the master, or sorry, the yeah, that's what it is, the
Hmm.
master.
Hmm.
Yeah. To look at that track and it'll light up like the keys that are in your key. I mean, it's not always 100% right the key you're trying to get, but it's like pretty.
Interesting.
It usually does pretty close. So then I see visually like, okay, well, I can't play like I got to play like the D sharp instead of a D in the
That's
scale, and then so
fascinating.
I look at it quickly, see it
Hmm.
visually, and then I can go to
Keyboard or
my solo
OP1
track and just kind of
or
and
or even okay, so you're talking about even
yeah.
improvising right on the Z, for example,
Yeah, and actually, what I'll
or
do is, and we can test this out a little bit. Is this actually? I gotta turn this on.
hmm
Um, so right now I'm using the microKORG kind of as a controller, as a module, but also as a controller. So, hmm, actually, that's not really.
I hear you hear both of us hear the first thing, but just not when you
Yeah, I
press
might
the
need to
key.
turn it back on.
Sure. So you usually use that key bed right there as as a MIDI controller as well for the sounds
Yeah,
on the Z, or is
yeah,
that what
to
that's
actually to
controlling?
play out sounds through the other synths.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh, through any of these synths that I was seeing on the
yeah, so
screen now.
basically, I'll
Uh-huh.
what I'll do is I can set the I'll set the track here. Um, let me turn local off. Oh, this MIDI out isn't wanting to work right now.
Mm-hmm. 'Cause I heard it the first time. That's so weird.
Yeah.
But when you turn that knob,
Well, so like right now, I'm having to use
yeah.
the OPZ to control this bass synth up in the corner over here.
I was about to say, yo, I was about to say, yo, what synth is that on the OPZ?
Oh, that's
Shoot, let me
the.
find out.
I'm glad
That's
you asked. That's the MFB Synth Lite 2, which I love. Super fun, flexible little synth.
totally.
Um, I think I've heard it that the engine is kind of based on the um, Moog Prodigy, I think it's called. Just like an old school, like I think it's a two oscillator, but also with a sub oscillator
Gotcha.
synth. But it basically does everything I need it to
It
for
sounds
bass
super.
at least.
This sounds super cool. Wait, so your TX6 you have all connected. So do you ever or do you sometimes move it around, or is it kind of like a portable, ultra portable device that you're currently using, sort of
Yeah,
as a permanent thing in the
it's
studio?
right now it's like permanently affixed to this
Yeah.
this kind of rig that I put together with the help of actually if I can move this over here and get like a maybe get a better view of it, but this stand was put together by this um, how's that? You able to see what's going on here?
Yeah, I can see.
The
Sure.
microphone's in the way a
A
little
little
bit,
bit.
but
Yeah.
uh, this guy in Italy, uh, Andrea, I think is the name, with
Okay.
3D Studio Furniture.
Okay.
Um, I worked with him on like a couple of other little stands for the bigger rig,
Mm-hmm.
and his rates are super affordable. He's fast. He kind of 3D prints like this kind of skeleton kind of armature.
Hmm.
And in this case, I had this vision of like this like mini setup that I want to bring on stage
Sure.
at some point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also that could become like my entire music making workstation and just ditch all the bigger stuff because I just got to scale everything down.
Sure.
Um, so I kind of sketched this out. I kind of like figured out which synths I wanted to use. Like on the top, I have a lot of the like 2010s MFB stuff. These two analog drum machines, the 503 and 522.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the 503 is kind of like a 909 style. The 522 is a really good 808 style clone almost,
Mm-hmm.
with all analog control. It's fully analog analog controls here, and then the light too. So they all kind of like fit very nicely together up here. They're all the
Mm-hmm.
same size. They
Looks
happen
like
to be the
one.
three of them happen to be like the same width as the micro
Yeah.
Korg,
Yeah. It just looks
which
perfect.
is
Like it
VA,
belongs.
but still sounds pretty cool to me. Still does what I need it to.
Sure. Sure.
Uh,
Wait. Let me
so
ask a
anyway, I
question.
had this idea and I kind of sketched it out. Um, I'm a designer, so that's kind of like
Sure.
that's what I do.
Sure.
And I sent it over to him, and he built this awesome stand. And I put it on a piece of like this kind of like it's almost this like marine grade plastic, but it's just like a board really.
Sure.
And I still have to put these on. I got these straps, almost like it's like a guitar amp kind of strap. I put on each
Okay.
side,
Yeah.
pick it
Yeah. Yeah.
up, bring it around. Got the microphone. Um, I don't know if you've seen these. Oh, did you hear that?
I did. That's pretty cool. We got a
Delay.
little echo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So effects processor there.
These fun little the Roland Compact series.
Okay.
I
I've
did have
seen
the
a little bit
Volcas
about
on
them.
here at
Mm-hmm.
one point, but I hit a bit of a wall in terms of the sounds that I could make with them. I think they sound great and are really cool. I had the Volca bass and keys.
Okay.
I don't know if you played with those.
I haven't. I've seen some
They're
videos on them. I mean, they look really cool, and I think people have spoken pretty highly about them from what
they're
I've
really
seen.
cool and fun. I mean,
Yeah.
they're classic, modern classics.
Yeah, sure,
Um,
sure.
but I ended up replacing them with these Roland Compact. They have uh,
Huh.
they're super flexible and
Wait,
like
let me ask a quick question here. Let me ask a question about your Z. So if I have it correct, everything that you just kind of showed, your drums, the bass, your synths, etc., your effects. So like you're using are you using sounds ever on the Z, or is everything that we just kind of seen
never.
never?
So
Okay,
I
so
don't
that's
even have an
fascinating.
audio out.
Okay, so
Um,
it's used as the brains for this
on the
entire
Z.
rig.
Yeah, yeah, it's the brains. So like
Okay, this is making
any sequence that I play out on it is coming straight
from
from
there.
everything else.
Okay, okay, okay. And because this setup is kind of it stays like this. When I was asking about recording out, like when you have an idea, okay, here's the question, right? So like if you're because I don't work that way as much. Like I don't okay. Oh, I didn't realize the TX6 had like a like screensaver thing on it. Like it just went black, so I was making
Yeah,
sure. No,
yeah,
you
yeah.
can
It
still hear me.
goes dark, but
If okay.
yeah, don't
Um,
don't worry. It's
yeah,
still
I was like, wait, what's okay?
it's still
So
on.
my thoughts are, if you have a preset that you really like on the bass on the top right there, that you like the sound, and you start working on something, sequencing it, having the OPZ control it, so you have something that's sounding really good, and then you add, et cetera, other pieces to it, and you have a like what you just played, you have a thing that sounds really good. Because this is MIDI, now you're kind of like the moment you change any parameters on that bass up there physically, it's gonna naturally sound different on the Z. So you have to get it where you want it, and then record it before even touching the equipment again, right? Essentially.
So that's a really good question. There was a time when I played with mapping all the MIDI CC parameters from the Z
Okay.
onto to all my external synths, and it was super fun, just like tweaking everything on here, and parameter locks and motion sequencing and all that. Very cool.
Yeah.
But I was running into some weird kind of like scenarios where sometimes I didn't want a certain sound that was coming out of like a parameter on here, and it was just like getting a little too hard to map and control.
Sure.
So I just tweak everything live, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of like the performance aspect for me, because
Mm-hmm.
once I record a sequence, it's recorded in there. But getting all the sounds and effects and
I
all
think
that
I see where
stuff.
you're
That's
going.
like the more performative
Yes.
aspect. So that I kind of do live. And
Okay.
actually, this bass synth actually does record. Actually, everything I have now does have the ability, aside from the MFB 522.
Mm-hmm.
They all have the ability to store patches,
Mm.
but patches also kind of freak me out a little bit, because if then I go to tweaks, I have a certain, um, preset, and I go to tweak something, it kind of that parameter kind of jumps from, I don't know where it's really coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of jumps to wherever I'm putting the knob.
Sure.
So I actually keep everything like 90% on just live front panel controls.
Okay. So you can, and this is a whole nother way of thinking about this, which is really interesting. It's like, okay, you have the sequence recorded, set, so when you're playing it and performing it, it's never going to be exactly the way that it was before, which is kind of the
Right.
beauty of it, right? It's still going to give that same essence because it's the beat. The beat is what it is. The sequence is what it is. But you could do all these types of things. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued with that, and I love the fact that, and I know you mentioned this to me about the Z on Instagram a while ago, that something along the lines of how you use it, how it's the brain of your whole setup there, whereas me, like I'm the complete opposite, right? I'm like, oh, the Z is, and that's what's so dope about it is that it's used, it can be used so differently than probably people out there.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you know Soul Lift, who uses the Z a lot
Yeah.
online on Instagram, And so I'm curious to know from his end, like if I see him use his like and do videos with just it standalone. So I'm pretty sure he does some of what I
Yep.
mentioned, but he may do dabble in both, areas, controlling other equipment as well.
Yeah, and it's awesome that you don't need like all of this to make a great sounding
Mm,
track that
yeah.
kind of like, speaks to your abilities on the Z because working the internal synth engines is like a
Mm-hmm.
whole other dimension to it really. It's got like both those sides to
Sure,
it.
sure, sure. The sequencing and then yeah, the one area about the Z that I struggle, yeah, that I definitely struggle with is sampling file management. So when we got the sampling on here, I was excited naturally. Everyone was like, "Oh, we can sample on here now. That's incredible with our, microphone or sample in." But the way that sampling works is, how do I best articulate this? You have those different storage slots on there, and if you if you record over one of those slots, then whatever was there previously in any of your songs, it's no longer going to play that way. And it's like a little bit versus the obviously the OP1 field. You record to tape, like even if you get rid of the sample, it doesn't matter because it's like
Yeah,
permanent
it's on
on
tape.
there. It's a different kind of, and I haven't cracked that code yet. So I've done
Yeah.
a little bit of sampling on there, and I like what I have like in terms of what's recorded already. So I just keep them there. But maybe it's a matter of experimenting, backing this whole
Yeah.
thing up, going and just experimenting at a cafe and just being like, I'm just starting from scratch and just seeing how this actually works. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure like it's flexible enough that you can probably do whatever you need to do with it in terms of sampling, but it's definitely not intuitive. It's not like a sampler in the way that the OP1 is like a
Yeah.
very easy intuitive sampler. It's kind of
Sure.
tricky. I actually went like really nuts on this thing at one point when I had it in my head that I wanted to be able to unplug it from my rig and have all the sounds be almost exactly the same when
Oh
I'm
yeah.
working and arranging on it
Sure.
away from the studio.
Sure.
And what I ended up doing was I sampled every drum sound I was
Oh,
using,
you went in.
sampled every synth that I was using,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I almost had like a clone of my studio, my hardware rig
Mhm.
on this thing, and it was very cool for a while. But then, like again, just became too difficult to manage, and then I
Yeah.
was like, it came to the point where I was like trying to get it to sound perfect on here and on the synths, and at
Yeah.
that point, it's like, okay, I'm just making this workflow too complicated. So
Yeah.
instead, I unplug it from here, and I have like some very basic sounds where I at least know where I am in the song. I can arrange and
Well,
whatever on the couch.
you just said something fascinating about workflow being too complicated. I do that a lot. And also, I just noticed I did this yesterday too. Like I wear glasses sometimes, and like I adjust them, but they're not on. But I just went to adjust them even though they're not
Yeah.
on just now. I'm like, what is happening now? Yes, simplifying workflow. And so for me as a content creator, one thing that I just recently realized, I have my iPhone that I'm using right now for this as the continuity cam thing that, like I mentioned, is finicky, but sometimes it does work properly. Um, have you heard of the Tula microphone before?
No.
Tula. So
Oh, is
they're
that the little like square kind of like condenser kind that I've seen you use?
yeah, probably. This one I actually have it in my bag here.
It
So
almost looks like the new Teenage Engineering
very similar. Yes,
microphone. Yeah.
indeed it does. Yeah, this one here.
Nice.
So it's a microphone, but it's also a mobile recorder. You have storage on here, so I can just talk into it and stuff like that. And just yesterday, this might sound obvious, but yesterday was like this sort of aha moment for me in that, I have several different cameras. I have a professional camera over here. I have a Nikon Z6 in the studio that I sometimes use for studio stuff. I have a, Sony one in the other office, other location studio for like top-down ones. I have my DJI Pocket 2 for vlog style, whatever, right? And so for me, that's three cameras now. That now we're talking three different, memory cards and three different just things to keep track of, storage, all these types of things. And just the other day, I'm like, all right, when I go to these cafes and I do like live streams with like this mobile rig that I have here. I use my phone, I use this setup, and those are fun to do. Um, but recently, I was like, wait a second, why can't I like use this headset and start like maybe record a video from the cafe, like a proper YouTube video where I'm talking to the camera and it's actually something that I'm planning on talking about or whatever the case is. Um, And so, yes, so I started doing that. Had a blast doing that. Like obviously sitting away from the light with the window and getting some really nice like angles and people in the background and like a little ambient noise and stuff. So I was like, yo, this looks super cool, and I'm excited to make more like this. And then I took that the next step, and I'm like, all right, well, if the video that I'm doing is, talking about some of my mobile gear or the iPad or whatever, then certainly I want to get the direct audio in, so I need the TX6 for that type of setup. But sometimes, like yesterday, for example, I just had something on my mind that I wanted to talk about. Yesterday's video that I didn't release yet that I recorded, there was I'm trying to remember already. What was it about? It was about the iPad. Okay, I do a lot of stuff on the iPad. I'm very intrigued and very curious about what comes next for the iPad Pro model. I have strong beliefs. I don't know. You're familiar enough with the iPad to know like all of them have like one port, right? One USB-C
Yep.
port on them typically, or Lightning back in the day. Looking at these new MacBook Airs, I was like frustrated in a way that the MacBook Airs have not just two ports, which is fine. It's a laptop. This is a tablet, okay. But they have two USBs, but they have the headphone jack on there still. And they got rid of the headphone jack on the iPad. And the iPad Pros now have Logic. So it's not logical, no pun intended, a little pun intended, for the next iteration, if they're taking this serious, to not have a headphone jack on it, in my opinion. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to like talk about like, what I want to see on the next iPad. Like I'd be thrilled if it has two USB-C ports and a headphone jack, et cetera, et cetera. But I say all this to say I was at a cafe and it was a lot of people around. I didn't feel as comfortable like doing like a talking type video there. So I went outside and I was going to bring my TX6 and I was going to, wire everything up and have this headset and talk or whatever. But then I was like, wait a second, I have this. I was like, I can connect this to the TX6 and do the same thing. But then I was like, wait a second, this is a mobile recorder and it has a windscreen with it. And I went outside, put the windscreen on, nothing. I actually took this piece out, just had this in my hand and just had the camera, right? Did the clap to sync everything. And then something just dawned on me in that moment where like it was and the quality, it looks so good, it sounds so good. I'm like, this is a setup that just feels more fun to make because I'm filming on something that already can do 4K. And maybe the kicker, which for me is a big thing, maybe others might say no, it doesn't matter. For me, it's like I'm filming on the same piece of equipment that I could then immediately get into editing. There's no file transfer, right? Any of these other cameras, you gotta, like, this thing is like a headache. It takes a while to wirelessly send it and all that stuff. So I say all that to say, yes, like simplifying the workflow to make things more fun for you, like, is critical, is super important. What I want to get
Yeah.
into next for the next few minutes, I want to hear some of your music. Let's go. Play me a couple beats. If you have them on there, like
Cool.
something. Yeah, I want to hear some music.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Um. All right. Let's see.
We got the exclusive, y'all. We got drootz, aka Jake, about to
That's
play
right.
us some jams.
Yeah, actually, that's my that's like my Instagram handle, but I'm releasing music right now under Pocket Spell.
Oh wow. I say I
Two
didn't
words,
know.
Pocket Spell.
Pocket spell. All
Yeah, I
right.
have a few
Dope.
tracks out, but I'm sitting on like a dozen tracks that I haven't put out yet, of course.
Okay.
And my old stuff is under V-neck Sweater. That's my more like bedroom pop kind of stuff that I
Wait, so you
kind of
got
retired
mad
for now.
names. So what is drootz? Is drootz like just like your
Drew,
online overall or
Droots is just like,
drootz? Okay.
yeah, that's just an old nickname from summer camp for like 25 years ago or something,
Oh,
like.
sweet.
Um,
Okay. Wow.
but yeah, maybe someday I'll, once I find the need for like, if I make
Sure.
it like a new kind of music, maybe I'll do it under Droots. Maybe when
Gotcha.
I'm doing
Gotcha.
like I'm doing like purely like DJ style electronic stuff. Maybe that would be
Gotcha.
Droots.
Well, let's hear it, man. Let's hear some
Okay,
stuff.
well, so you know, I actually like didn't set up like a lot of my parameters and everything needed for a lot of these tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just like sample a couple of like loops I've done on here for you, if that's
Sounds
cool.
good. Yeah.
And a lot of them were actually based around presets on the tonic. Um, so
Okay.
so on the what's that, the PO33?
So I'm not even familiar with the pocket operators. I've never owned one, believe it or
Oh
not.
yeah?
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
I think yeah, it's kind of maybe crazy because I know that a lot of the essence of the Z from the performance stuff comes from the operator, I think, from what
Yep.
I've heard. But yeah, no, just never have yet. Maybe eventually one day. But whatever you just played was sounded cool. So that was some
Well,
drums.
I'm just hitting play on the tonic right now.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Do you want to? Should we do like a quick loop from scratch?
Yeah, that works.
Real
yeah.
quick first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whatever. I'm good with that.
Let's do it. Let's do just like a workflow loop, if that
Yeah, sure.
if that's interesting.
We got 8 minutes.
Okay.
So do
All
your
right.
thing.
Oh.
We got the exclusive here. I already forgot the artist name. Can you say it again? That you want to
Pocket Spell.
Pocket Spell. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So we got Pocket Spell about to hit us up.
Kind of
with
based on all these like pocket-sized little
Yeah.
synths I'm using.
For sure, for sure.
All right. So. All right. I'm starting on the kick track, right?
And these are coming right from one of those drum machines up there, not the Z.
You know what? I want to change that. I don't know. I don't know about that part. We'll see. Whoa, I did something
Yeah,
crazy
buddy.
big
Here we go. Here we go.
What did I do over here? Real simple bass.
Yeah, that's dirty.
Oh man, we got a lot of classic sounds here, but
Yo, hit stop for a second, if you can hear me.
yeah.
Have you ever used, that sounds dope so far, have you ever used the duck feature on the TX6?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do it, yeah. So that way you could talk. Put that in there.
Oh
You
yeah,
can show
yeah.
people
Cool. I've
when
never
you're-
had a good.
That's
good reason
that's
to use
another
that.
cheat code. Yeah, for like tutorials or even live streams or whatever.
Okay, duck activated.
Sweet. So now
Maybe
when you talk.
Actually, does like the reverb? I don't know if any of the effects actually go through USB,
I'm not sure either.
but I think duck will.
Mm-hmm. Duck will
Man,
for
I
sure.
don't know. I'm not super happy with where that jam was headed, but
That's okay. Do your thing. Either continue or start from scratch. You got 4 minutes. No pressure.
oh man.
Actually, there's a little bit of pressure. Anytime someone says you have this many minutes, pressure immediately.
Oh, here's another drum loop I already had. Oh, you hear it ducking with my voice?
Yeah, that's it. I do hear it. Yeah, this is good.
what happens if I add a little
That's cool,
EO.
man.
So the pocket operator is set to sync out from one of these roll-ins. So then I can do some effects on here, like.
So that pocket operator is set to sync the drums. You're like remixing the drums a little bit. The hi-hats.
Yeah, and then I can get like more variation, of course, from the performance track, right?
Sure. Yeah, dude. Yo. Heck yeah, man.
Oh, then I can like solo tracks, right?
Using the TX6 mixer
Yeah.
now to solo tracks.
So you just hold down the tracks, or the button.
Okay. Oh yeah, because you have, I'm just thinking out loud here, you got each of the audio coming. That's cool, man.
And then if I want to get crazy with some vocals, you know, I have this thing.
Bro, that's some good stuff,
Anyway,
man.
that's basically it.
That's a good
That's how
jam.
that's how I have fun after dark.
Word. Synths come out at night. That's cool,
That's
man.
right.
I definitely appreciate you demonstrating that. I think others who watch this will get a lot out of that too. Either people who own any of this equipment or people who are just looking to just get inspired
Right on.
and think about different workflows. Like even just looking at your mixer there, and I guess say this for the last bit. What's kind of interesting about the mixer is it's so portable, so it can be brought anywhere, but it's also so powerful. So sometimes I know several people who use it in the setting like the way you're using it, where you have things connected to it where it's not as convenient or beneficial to take it and move it out and do all different kind of things with it. Um, and so rarely have I ever even had multiple things. I think maybe two, maybe three max different inputs connected to it.
Yeah,
With
so right now I'm
alignments.
using every input but two tracks. So I have the track split dual mono.
Okay.
So what's happening is, you know, it's like you see six inputs, but really behind here they're split. So I have like 12 different inputs. So that way I get like the different each drum part on a different track. So I'm
Yeah.
using so this one's like kick and snare, but it's all separate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they do share like a slider and effects,
Yeah.
but they'll be split out when you plug it into your DAW. So this is
Gotcha.
really a 12-channel mixer.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It's
That's cool.
it's awesome.
It's an
I
incredible
came
piece
from
of
the
tech.
actually in between. I was working with the Blue Box 1010.
Yeah.
I don't
Heard
know if
of
you're
it.
familiar with it. It's like the other really the only other like compact mixer like this in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very capable, and it's got like there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. But it was missing like the hands-on feel of these knobs and sliders, even though they're tiny, and these
Mm-hmm.
buttons.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much more like hands-on. I'm not going to say knob per function, but like enough on here that this could be everything
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
need.
I think, yeah, the thing is with the six is like for people who are out there that are considering getting one and are professionals and have, you know, like have the money to pay for one, if you get one, you're not going to receive this and be disappointed with it.
No.
Right,
No.
that's not going to happen. I think that's
Yeah, if it's in your budget, you're not going to regret it.
That's the way.
And you know, you can always return it if you do.
Exactly, you have that option.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for the time. This was really, really great. I'm glad we had a chance to do this. And you know, I sometimes let people know that like just the act of spending an hour talking to someone face to face, who's interested in the same things or very similar things, and just kind of being able to do this is something that's very special for me and for my guests, I think. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time
Very
out.
much.
And
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome and really good talking to you. Not quite in person, but almost.
we'll do the in-person jam. I'm gonna hit you up,
Cool.
man. You already know.
Sounds
Have a
good.
good one, bro.
Thank you so much.
Take care.